What is up, ladies and gentle nerds? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and we are here today with another edition of Overthinking MTG, looking at the Ikoria Lair of Behemoths spoilers. And today I want to look at a card that is it's touching a special place in my heart for a couple of reasons. One, it's super cute, and what can I say? I love cute stuff. I'm man enough to admit that I enjoy cute things. And also, it is providing some really cool, very powerful support for a mechanic that I really enjoy that I think is underappreciated in a lot of ways. And that mechanic is Menace. And of course, I am talking about the Tentative Connection, which was spoiled today by a amazing YouTuber who you desperately need to check out. His name is Spice8Rack, and he actually he did the most interesting spoiler video that I've ever seen, where instead of doing the traditional, hey, this is our card, look at how cool it is, right? Neat. All right, catch you next time. Which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, heck, that's kind of what I'm doing here. But what he did was he actually wrote a short story that leveraged three preview cards, and he like found ways of intertwining them along with the flavor text, and actually wrote a short story. And it was funny because he actually does a really good job of telling a story that seems like it should fit, and presumably, based on the cards, it looks like it is exactly what happens. So it's kind of an interesting situation. Anyway, so you know what? If it's not canon, it's canon for me. All right. So Wizards, if that's a problem, well, probably shouldn't give Spice any more previews, but please do because he does a great job. Anyway, so Tentative Connection. It is a sorcery. It costs 4, 3 and 1 red. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a creature with Menace. Menace is a pseudo evasion mechanic that I absolutely adore. When a creature has Menace and it attacks, your opponent, well, or the blocking player, cannot block with a single creature. So they either don't block it at all or they have to block it with two creatures at least or more. So it creates a level of complexity to the combat math. It's not perfectly unblockable, but if your opponent only has one creature, well, it is. It is effectively unblockable in that situation. So that's pretty cool. Also, you have a situation where your opponent might have one blocker that is clearly like their chump blocker, the thing they want to step in front of stuff, and then they might have like a piece of their combo or a great card that they don't want to put in harm's way, but those are their only two creatures. And then they have a conundrum. It's like, well, do I let this creature swing in and hit me in the face, or do I put both in front of it and risk my valuable creature in combat? So that's pretty cool. And also one of the things I've noticed about the Ikoria spoilers in general, there's a lot of menace support. There are a lot of ways to interact and get around it, and Tentative Connection is one of those. So if you have a creature with menace, it only costs 1. Now, what does the spell do, you ask? Haha. Well, strap in. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn. I saw this card about 3 days after I discovered just how crazy powerful Claim the Firstborn is in Standard. If you're not familiar, Claim the Firstborn is a sorcery for 1 that is gain control of target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. Untap it, it gains haste, and you give it back at the end of turn. So this is the exact same thing, except you can target any creature as long as you have Menace. If you don't have Menace, then it costs 4, which is in line with cards like Portent of Betrayal, which is a similar effect. And in that case, you get to scry 1 as an added little bonus. So this is a threaten effect. It's very standard for what we see in red. It's something that, all right, cool. It's not weird. It fits the theme, everything we've got going on. And it's just, it's that threaten effect where you're taking a thing and you may be doing it for 1. And the other cool thing about that is if you have creatures with menace, you can take one of their blockers, and now all of a sudden they no longer have that option. The fact that you have menace was already limiting their blocking options. They have some, but you're limiting it. Now it's fun. You're in a situation where you could take, like, one of the things that I love to do with threat effects right now is steal the creature, swing it at my opponent, and then sacrifice it to something. Sacrifice it to my Witch's Oven or my Woe Strider. So just kill it. Now you can absolutely do that with Tentative Connection. There's no reason you couldn't. If you have a sacrifice outlet available to you, great. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a classic move. Works great. Works great. Feels great. It's a it's cool movement, a cool moment. You have good turns. But the cool thing with Tentative Connection, if you have creatures with menace, you're all of a sudden getting some incredible value in combat just because you're pulling one of their blockers out. You get to swing in, and now all of a sudden, if you have even if you only have one creature with menace, all of a sudden that one creature's probably unblockable in a lot of situations. Um, just practically speaking, because you may limit your opponent down to just one. And my camera's having a tough time focusing, so I apologize. I'm working on it. How close do I need to get? How much do I got to really hover on top of this thing? Okay, well, I guess I'm just going to be all up in your face for a second. Yeah, here we go. So it's really slick because you have that option, but if you're swinging in, your menace creatures are going to become incredibly difficult to block. If you have two creatures with menace swinging in, your opponent needs to have four blockers if they want to have a chance at blocking that thing at all. That freaking rules. I love this. So the other thing about that is the other thing that's swinging in is potentially their biggest creature because there's no size limitation on this, unlike some other threat effects like Claim the Firstborn, which is kind of wrecking shop in standard right now. So I cannot tell you how much I love this. And so okay, let's talk cuteness factor. So flavorfully, we have Luca, who is a planeswalker. Don't know if he's a planeswalker at the beginning of the story, or if that happens, if his spark ignites somewhere in the middle. Not sure. Haven't read the book yet. Don't know that I will. I haven't read a magic novel in a very long time. But regardless, um, he is befriending a very large it's a type of tiger, it's a type of winged tiger. For the life of me, I can't remember the name because I just learned it today, but it's a very large winged um, white and orange striped cat with some really incredibly impressive fangs. And the tiger's head is almost the size of, well, it's actually bigger than Luca's torso, to give you an idea. So the picture depicts Luca with its hand up kind of on the tiger's cheek, and he's lifting his hand up in a motion that cat owners will recognize as the "you can smell me, it's okay." That traditional. It's very clearly capturing that moment where it's like, no, no, give me a sniff, I'm a friend. And because cats and dogs too, they want to get a sense of who you are. And with that, well, it's their sense of smell. It's how they enjoy your scent. That's how they get to know people. And so that's clearly what he's doing here. But he flavorfully, I love the idea that it's that moment where and if you've ever gone over to a friend's house who has a cat and you try to be cool to it and it's not having it, there's that moment where you're kind of like, well, yeah, you can sniff my hand, you can smell me, I'm okay, I'm a friend. And they're like, and they're like, okay, geez, it's that moment except gone well. It's that moment where it's like, no, you can sniff me, and the tiger seems to be like, okay. Never mind the fact that like at your neighbor's house when you're going to, you know, let the cat sniff your hand, you don't know do they have their claws? Are they gonna bite me? I might have like a scratch on my hand. That would suck, but it's not a big deal. Now, in this case, if that tiger is in the mood to hiss and swat at Luca, Luca's gonna get eaten like 100%. That tiger's gonna straight up eat him. I don't even know if he would need to chew. That thing is huge, and so it's a very different dynamic. I love the flavor in the card too. The tentative connection. You're an ally for now. Like we're cool for right now, but he's approaching a wild beast. Like, hey, hey, we're okay? Hey, we're cool, right? So I love that. And it makes sense, the idea that you can pull somebody over for one turn and then they'll flee, they'll run away, they'll run back to their owner. It's kind of a fun take on the traditional threat and effect. Like a lot of stuff you see, a lot of other depictions, it's stealing something or like enchanting a creature so that it like loses control and joins your side. You're like mentally enslaving them. This is very different. It's a very subtle, much more delicate look at it. And the flavor text is Luca was ordered to kill a threat. He chose to make a friend. So that's kind of fun. And also, if you notice the Luca Planeswalker card, the art is kind of all over right now. And the only reason I haven't talked about it on this show yet is because there are a lot of people talking about it. It's a very powerful Planeswalker. It's a new big splashy Planeswalker from the set. And to be honest, if Lutri had not been spoiled on the same day, I probably would have talked about him as well back on Ikoria day number 1. He's a very powerful planeswalker, and pictured in his art is this gigantic winged tiger that he's just chilling with. So clearly, they become very good friends. And so this moment is a tentative connection, but it becomes a much deeper one. That's the other thing that I really dig about Ikoria. So I haven't intentionally investigated the lore too much, but just looking at the spoiler cards, there are clearly bonders. So we clearly have people who befriend monsters, and those monsters are the enemy. They're perceived to be the enemy of humans for whatever reason. Um, I understand the idea of wild animals that are big and very powerful and potentially destructive makes sense. Like that all kind of checks out. And so you have these people who um, operate independently and become very close and connect and bond with, I believe, one specific beast, one specific animal, one specific monster, if you will. Um, I believe that that's the idea based on what I've seen. And a lot of the partner commanders that we see are actually beasts and humans. And so the idea that humans and beasts can live in live in harmony, but only in kind of this fringe case is kind of cool. Otherwise they're clearly at odds with one another. They're clearly fighting. It's interesting. It's kind of fun, and that actually comes through on the flavor text. So I'm very curious as to who these bonders are, because again, it would seem as though they're on the outskirts of society, like they're shunned from the rest of human civilization, and I'd love to understand why that is. Um, just yeah, because I don't know, and I find myself very curious. So yeah, this is an interesting stuff. So this has been Tentative Connection. The other cool thing about this is it's a common. This is a common. So I'm imagining that. So when I look at the cards, I see menace as a very common theme. I see menace counters. I see bonuses for creatures with menace. Um, and of course we have cards like this. So menace is clearly a theme that they're leaning into, and I suspect, given the way that Wizards does their implementation, with the way that they do their development, they look at a limited environment a lot. They focus on the holistic limited experience. So when you're drafting, what does this set feel like from top to bottom? Just if you're playing just with this set, how does it feel? And I would imagine that that's a lot of where the menace stuff comes from. I suspect they wanted, when they were looking at what are the different draft archetypes that people could find themselves leaning towards. I can imagine somebody saying, "Well, what about Menace? We haven't really done much with it. It's there, it's around, but it's not really prominent." So that's an effect that they're clearly leaning into and really giving some support to, and I like to see that. That makes me happy. The other thing that I've noticed is on the Commander products, there are cards with Goad printed, which is another really underappreciated keyword that has a lot of really cool potential. And so it's nice to see that. I'm glad that they're giving some of these keywords that already existed some more support and giving them their due, because what you get when they do that, when they lean into mechanics that already exist, what ends up happening is you have fun limited environments that feel unique and special, because this is one of the only times where menace is going to really be a feature. Meanwhile, you then also get fun cards with Menace or that trigger off of Menace that now can interact with the backlog of Menace cards that didn't exist before. And so that gives you all kinds of more tools in more eternal formats or more casual formats where you can take these limited cards and build out commander decks now. You could build out a menace themed commander deck. Why not, right? And you can have stuff like this in it. And if you drafted a lot of Ikoria with a lot of menace and a lot of mutate creatures, then you can build like a menace mutate commander deck, because why not? And that I love that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And so Tentative Connection is one of those cards that is in a certain circumstance, if you are theming your deck around menace, or you have enough menace creatures to reasonably hit this for 1 mana, it's incredibly powerful. But it's situational, and I can appreciate that. I think this hits the right um, this hits a perfect balance. It's not unplayable if you have to play it for 4, but it's not an amazing value. But if you're on theme and if the situation is just right, you can get this effect for 1, and that's an incredibly good value. So it's situationally excellent and never quite unplayable, which I think is like perfect. I think I love it. I think this is power creep gone right, my friends. That's what this is. So I enjoyed very much, and like I said, super cute. I mean, look at that cat. Look at that cat. As somebody who has an orange cat myself, I can appreciate it. Anyway, this has been a lot of fun, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. It's been Overthinking MTG. I've been HamHawks42. I will continue to be so going forward, I believe, and I will catch you next time.